Bill Barr is the author of One Damn Thing After Another, and the former Attorney General who appointed Durham as special counsel to investigate the origins of the FBI Russian probe. All right, so Attorney General, do you feel any way responsible for how this Durham situation's unfolding, and are you disappointed in John Durham?
No, I'm very proud of John Durham, and I do take responsibility for his appointment, and I think he and his team did an exceptionally able job, both digging out very important facts and presenting a compelling case to the jury. And the fact that while he did not succeed in getting a conviction from the D.C. jury, I think he accomplished something far more important, which is he brought out the truth in two important areas. First, I think he crystallized the central role played by the Hillary campaign in launching as a dirty trick the whole Russiagate collusion narrative and fanning the flames of it. And second, I think he exposed really dreadful behavior by the supervisors in the FBI, the senior ranks of the FBI, who knowingly used this information to start an investigation of Trump and then duped their own agents by lying to them and refusing to tell them what the real source of that information was. And that was appalling. I am a little tired of voices, saying, these people belong in jail. Why aren't they in jail? Get them in jail. What this episode should remind us about is that we don't just throw people in jail, and the Attorney General does not have the power to throw people in jail because the Attorney General believes, even with a high degree of confidence, that people have acted improperly. He has to prove his case beyond a reasonable doubt before a jury. And in government cases, that means a D.C. jury, which is a very favorable jury for anyone named Clinton and the Clinton campaign. Those are the facts of life. And to get mad at law enforcement people because proving these cases beyond a reasonable doubt is difficult work is childish.
But do you understand the frustration, Mr. Attorney General, of many Americans that feel like this thing was a hoax and they feel victimized and they feel like they were cheated out of accountability here by not getting a conviction? Because this narrative is that, because the media didn't cover this trial at all until
no one is more frustrated. No one is more frustrated than the law enforcement people who are trying to uphold the law and try to uphold one standard of the law. And they're not. There are two standards of the law, and we've had to struggle with that. And people have done, I think, a very good job trying to develop this case in the face of very strong headwinds. And part of this operation is to try to get the real story out. And I've said from the beginning, if we can get convictions, if they're achievable, then John Durham will achieve them. But the other aspect of this is to get the story out. And I think the Danchenko prosecution is going to further amplify these themes and the role that the FBI leadership played in this, which is increasingly looking fishy and inexplicable.
Well, tell us who the Danchenko character is, because I'm not sure the audience knows fully what's the next step in the Durham probe.
He is the Russian who was the conduit for all the information that made it into the dossier that was then used by the FBI to get the FISA warrant and to prosecute its investigation against Trump even after he became president of the United States, and at a time when the veracity of that dossier was falling apart. And the FBI was aware that the primary source of it they had suspected of being a Russian intelligence agent. So the prospect that this was Russian disinformation fed through Hillary's campaign is very real and was never looked into by Mueller, even though he had all the relevant facts. I also disagree. I very typically agree with Andy, but I disagree that this case was lost or mismanaged because he painted the FBI as being duped. He didn't. What I think he skillfully did was focus on the clearest violation of law that didn't require him to prove even, much more onerous case of the bad faith of the FBI at this stage. That would have been a Herculean case and very difficult, high degree of difficulty compared to what he was doing. He treated the FBI as neutral and let the facts speak for themselves. He didn't say they were duped. You know, the materiality of the lie told by Sussmann, or that he was alleged to have told the FBI, in my mind, was clear.
Right. Yeah, but they weren't neutral, were they? They weren't. The FBI.
Well, yeah, and that was a matter for you know, that is a case that has to be billed painstakingly, and to try to lead off by saying, you know, the FBI are bad guys and this was all you know, a vendetta by them would be a very hard thing to prove at this stage.
All right. Well, it's hard to prove anything
in front of a D.C. jury.
It's hard to prove anything in front of a D.C. jury. You and I definitely agree on that, and I think that's people's
here are the facts.
Frustration. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, complicated cases like this take a long time to build. They occur step by step and in secret. People don't like that. But if they want people punished, that's what it takes. If they want the facts of what happened, you can get it that much more quickly. You can give people immunity, and then, you know, require them to provide evidence.
Yeah.
If you want the facts, if you want a report, right, that can be done fairly quickly.
Well,
if you want scalps, that takes time.
We want punishment and a report and facts.
You want both.
Yeah, we want both. All right, Mr. Attorney General, thank you so much for joining Jesse Watters Primetime.
Yeah. Thanks, Jesse.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.